Thank you and good evening. Welcome. Welcome to the 28th Martin Bucksbaum Distinguished Lectureship. On behalf of the Martin Bucksbaum Lectureship Committee and all of us at Drake University, I want to tell you how pleased we are that you have joined us this evening. I'd like to begin with some important acknowledgments, and first I'd like to thank Melva Bucksbaum, who is not able to be with us tonight, but she has been instrumental not only in the establishment of the Bucksbaum Lectureship, but along with her daughter Mary, has made a generous gift last year to expand its impact, and so we're very, very grateful to Melva and Mary. Second, I'd like to express our gratitude to members of the Bucksbaum Lectureship Committee, Chair Professor Neil Hamilton, who's here tonight, Julian Archer, who is not able to be with us, Jim Autry, who is here, Pamela Bass-Bookie, who I believe is not here, Melva, Michael Gardner, David Hurd, who's here this evening, Janice Ruan, Mary Bucksbaum Scanlon, and Professor Eleanor Zeff, who is here this evening. Will you please join me in thanking them for their work on this important lecture. Third, I want to give a very special and hearty thanks to Connie Weimer and Frank Fogarty, who first suggested bringing their old friends, President Fox and his wife Marta, who is here with us this evening, bring them to Drake for the Bucksbaum Lecture, and who were instrumental in facilitating this visit to Drake and to Des Moines. So Frank and Connie, we thank you. And last but certainly not least, I'd like to express sincere thanks to Erica Harchin, who's the coordinator of the series, for all of her hard work and guidance, and to my wife Maddie, who has undertaken considerable efforts in support of tonight's event. So thank you both for everything you've done. As I said, this is the 28th lecture in the Martin Bucksbaum Distinguished Lectureship Series, and as you can see in the program, we've had an extraordinary list of speakers over the years, and it's all been made possible by Melva and the late Martin Bucksbaum. Mr. Bucksbaum was a very successful business leader. He was chair and president of General Growth Corporation, which is a leading retail development company, and he also served for more than 15 years as a member of Drake's governing board. The lectureship was designed to bring people of international stature to deliver a major address on such issues as those affecting business, health, the arts, and international affairs to the Drake campus. The Bucksbaum Lecture has been Drake's most powerful and most enduring event in fulfilling the university's social compact, a responsibility at the core of a university and a civil society to serve as the place where the community comes together to discuss, to consider, and to debate the vital issues of the day. We're very, very grateful to Martin, to Melva, and Mary for enabling us to carry out this responsibility in such a profound and impactful manner. Now, following tonight's presentation, President Fox has kindly consented to respond to audience questions for a few minutes. There's a microphone, there are two microphones, I believe, located on the floor down the middle aisle, and if you feel inspired to approach the microphone, I would like to ask you as tactfully as I can two things. One, please make sure that you have a focused, brief question to which our speaker can respond. Not an ideological or philosophical monologue, as tempting as that might be in front of such a large audience. Second, please be brief. Remember that the audience came here to hear President Fox, not you. I have to tell you, since my requests of this nature in the past have not always been fully met, I'm afraid that we can again resort to what may appear to be a heavy-handed approach, and that is that our sound engineer will turn off the microphone after 30 seconds, which should be plenty of time to ask an appropriate question. One more quick item of housekeeping. If you have any device in your possession that rings, buzzes, chirps, croaks, or plays the first 4 bars of your favorite Lady Gaga song, I'd ask you to make sure that it doesn't do that until after the conclusion of this event this evening. Now, this evening's honored guest, President Vicente Fox, served as President of Mexico from the year 2000 until 2006. He was the first candidate from an opposition party to be elected president since 1920, garnering 42% of the vote, marking the first time that the then dominant Institutional Revolutionary Party had lost a presidential election. Under his leadership, the country experienced a stretch of economic growth and stability. In 1995, he had been elected the governor of his home state of Guanajuato by an overwhelming majority of 2-1. And under his leadership from 1995 to 1999, Guanajuato became the 5th most important Mexican state economy, and in some sectors even surpassed the national average. He studied business administration, and I should tell you that I'm about to say Spanish words with probably a Russian accent. He studied business administration at the Universidad Iberoamericana. He then received a management diploma at the Harvard Business School. He rose in the Coca-Cola Company from a route supervisor to president of the company for Mexico and Latin America. His upbringing on a ranch in Guanajuato taught him to value the loyalty of everyday people, to appreciate Mexico's enormous potential to become one of the world's leading nations. He said that I fully understand the value of opportunity. I grew up on an ejido with peasant children, and the only difference between my childhood friends and me lies in the opportunities that I received. Since leaving office, President Fox has been involved in public speaking and in the development of Centro Fox, a state-of-the-art presidential library and center for the advancement and study of democracy and leadership that encourages a sense of commitment and solidarity among the Mexican population, especially for the underprivileged and for those who have not enjoyed yet the benefits of economic development. In his book that was released in October of 2007, Revolution and Hope, The Life, Faith, and Dreams of a Mexican President, he outlines a new vision of hope for the future of the Americas. Now, we have a very special presentation before President Fox speaks, so it is my pleasure to introduce, along with President Fox, the Honorable Frank County, Mayor of the City of Des Moines, for this special presentation.
It's an honor for me to be here as mayor of the city of Des Moines and the capital city of Iowa. During the period of my mayorship here in Des Moines, we've had the opportunity to host the North American Super Corridor Conference right here in Des Moines, where we brought our neighbors from Canada and also from Mexico and talked about the future and the importance of the three countries working together in North America and the future that we can have through trade and friendship, and also knowing that we are the closest partners in the world, in this continent, and are working together and how much it means. I had an opportunity last night to speak with the president, and he speaks very strongly about that relationship. And certainly we think that Iowa plays a great part in that. I have a very long presentation that I was going to make, but I think the most important thing is to know that we are honored here in Des Moines to have a leader of our neighbor to the south, a very important country, not only in this continent, but to the world and to the future of what we see as opportunities for not only ourselves, but our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and all the future generations to follow. And that only through friendship and partnership are we going to all succeed. I will today say that in his presentation and his acceptance to his election, I'm going to read to you quickly what President Vicente Fox said as he said that he would work tirelessly to fulfill the commitment he mentioned in his inaugural address by saying, "I have and will continue to have an obligation to drive forward the efforts of this great nation, to work passionately for those who made Mexico what it is, and for those who built the Mexico we have today, and for those who have dreamt of a different, successful, and triumphant Mexico. Now, therefore, I, Mayor of the City of Des Moines, do hereby recognize President of Mexico, Vicente Fox, for his great achievements and the commitment to the citizens of Mexico. It is with great pleasure that I present him, only for today, by the way, key to the City of Des Moines."
Please welcome President Vicente Fox.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. Muchas
gracias. Muchísimas gracias. Buenas noches. Todo el mundo habla español aquí, ¿verdad? ¿Sí? O cuando menos todo el mundo entiende español. Okay. Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you very much, Major, for this presentation. And thank you all for being here for this dialogue. I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to learn, like I did this morning with different groups of students of this great university, state-of-the-art university of excellence, known worldwide, and of course, known and has a great reputation in Mexico. I feel maybe like the Pope felt last Sunday in front of 1 million people watching and listening to him. And by the way, it was a great, great message of love, compassion, understanding, tolerance, invitation to all Mexicans to keep united, invitation to forgive, invitation to understand, invitation to be enthusiastic about building the Mexico of the 21st century. It was a great, great message. But now we're here in Iowa, and I always liked to be here. I came here when I was young, when my father used to send us, my eldest brother, and myself to this place, also to Texas, to learn, to buy products, full, pure bread, hogs, dairy cows, and to learn about farming. So we did have part of our training in this great state. By the way, very similar to the state of Guanajuato. We're also a very large producer of grain, of wheat, corn, sorghum. Today, we're a very large producer of vegetables, winter vegetables, broccolis, cauliflowers, Brussels sprouts, that we freeze or we pack and ship to the States. Maybe you don't know this, but the state of Guanajuato provides 70% of what you consume in this nation of those vegetables. So we have become not only a source of supply, but a solid partner of this nation. And we're very proud of that. And today, I will try to give you a bird's eye or a satellite view of what's going on in the world, according to what Marta and I see in our 70% traveling time that we do around the world to raise funds for the library, for the first presidential library ever outside United States, and also to have an intense dialogue precisely with this nation. I don't think it's time to build walls between Mexico and United States. It's time to build bridges, bridges of understanding, bridges of friendship, bridges of partnership, bridges of trading, bridges of academic and technological exchange. Because at the very end, God did not create borders. That's a human doing. And we just happen to be together, we just happen to be friends, and we just happen to be partners. And this is why I will speak a little bit about NAFTA, this partnership agreement that we signed about 12, 14 years ago. And today is dormant. We're not using that powerful tool the way we should be using it in difficult times, in economic crisis, in times of slow growth, in times where the shift from west to east is moving pretty fast. And these times where all three nations of NAFTA were losing jobs to the east, to China, to India, to Asia. More than ever, we should strengthen this partnership. More than ever, we should have a new vision of NAFTA in the way we can not only partner, but we can make synergy and make sure that we keep being the #1 bloc in the world, the #1 market, consumer market, that we are together, the #1 economy when we are together, and the #1 in competitiveness and quality to meet the challenges of the future. Today, no one single nation can meet that challenge on its own. Today, the world is forming blocs. Today, the bloc is forming partnerships. And today, we're more and more working together. And this is the way Latin America is integrating. This is the way Asia is integrating. This is the way Africa is integrating. And North America cannot be behind. At the very end, this is the dream of the founding fathers of this nation. And that dream, so-called the American dream, at the very end is the dream of all of the Americas. We share that dream together with you. We also want to put together equal opportunities to all. We also want to work hard to build a future for our families. We also want to build a human capital to protect the natural resources. We want to create the jobs and the income that families need in Mexico. And we're working hard to do that. Right now, we're going through elections. This nation is going through an election. And we'll decide who is going to be the next administration. And key strategic issues are going to be debated. And I am sure, like always, that democracy will bring in new ideas, will bring in innovation, creativity, will bring in solutions to the problems, will bring in an evaluation and analysis to see where we stand, what are we doing right, what have we done wrong. And this is a great gift that we all get from electoral processes and from democracy. At the very same time, we're running our own election in Mexico. And again, key issues are going to be debated. But in the case of this nation, we must attend a few issues that become crucial not only to this nation, but also to our partnership. This nation has held a leading position right after World War II and all along the 20th century, and has to keep that leading position in this century. Sometimes we miss the leader. Sometimes we don't understand why the leader is enclosing within its walls that is building. We don't understand what we sense some sort of fear. Only those who have fear build walls. What we should be building is bridges of understanding, is bridges of exchange among our nations. This election will give us the opportunity to think about whether we want to keep consuming and we want to keep indebting our nation and we want to keep having huge deficits, or we're ready to save some resources to the future and to future generations. When you compare the saving rates of Asia to the ones in this nation, it's a huge difference. They have saving rates very high, and they are then investing to the future. This nation has a huge deficit and has huge over debt. So it's time to reflect on those issues. But at the very end, we want to keep seeing the leadership of this nation. We want it in open markets. We want it competing. We want this nation sharing its values all across the world. And this is what is going to be decided on this election. In the case of Mexico, we have key issues that have to do with security, crime, and drugs. We must remove that obstacle that is limiting our capacity to grow, to create jobs, to create wealth. It's limiting our capacity to build the human capital that we need to improve the quality of our education system and to do honor to the partnership that we share with the United States and Canada. Key issues in the public and private partnerships and the reforms that we need to do on energy, on labor, on tax, that are urgent to do in our country. We must discuss together issues like migration, because all of a sudden, there seems to be a negative perception of what migration is. When this nation has been built through migrants all along, in this very place, each and every one of you, when we look backwards, we have a migrant heritage, either coming from Europe, coming from Asia, coming from Africa, coming from Latin America. And that's the people that has built this great nation and its American dream. And yes, we have to speak about opportunities that we have in migration. Of course, I'm not for open borders. I'm for the use of wisdom, talent, to put together a framework where we can make out of this issue not only a positive issue, but a win-win situation. At the very end, we're very complementary economies and very complementary constitutions of population. This nation is getting old in the sense of the population pyramid. More and more people is reaching the age of the retirement. And so this economy needs to the future the dynamism, the strength, the power of youth to keep running and growing the economy so that pension plans, so that retirement plans can be nourished through a successful economy. When this economy runs, or this nation runs, at rates of 2 or 2.5% growth a year on its gross domestic product, you need about 500,000 new workers to come in and join in pushing the growth of the economy. And those are not available within. They have to be imported. Right now, we're coming from a crisis. But that should not change our thinking of building a bright future, a future of prosperity and partnership between our nations. And that is at our hand, and we can work on that. North America, and this is Canada, United States, and Mexico, today we conform the largest economy in the world. Together. Today, we're the largest consumer market and bloc in the world. And North America is leading the way. And you might ask yourselves, why is this Mexican saying that we're equal partners? Well, let me give you just one figure. Mexico buys, imports from United States more than 250 billion US dollars worth of imports. Or we import from United States more than what France, Italy, Germany, and Britain do together, just Mexico. So we're a very solid, reliable partner of this nation and its economy. We're accountable. Mexico is accountable for hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of jobs to U.S. citizens. So our path is to keep growing together, to have a new vision on NAFTA so that we make sure that we keep our presence in the world and we protect our jobs and our families. It's clear, and it's in the books, and it's written, this shift of power, of financial resources, of market consumption from the West to the East. And no more than 15 years from now, Chinese economy will be larger than U.S. economy. And if China and India come to an agreement, a trade agreement, and a partnership much sooner than that, this shift will have been accomplished. And we should question ourselves what happens when this paradigm changes from the West to the East. We have lived by the values we believe in, the values that we listened and heard from our founding fathers, or that we got from Europe, the Western civilization. But what will happen if the shift also moves leadership to the East? What are going to be the prevailing values then? But that future is forecasted by some of those visionary men that can see the future, like George Friedman, with The World is Flat, or Tom Friedman, when he speaks about the next 10 years, on the next 100 years. But the future is in our hands. We build it. Leaders build the future. Institutions are needed, are indispensable, but the vision, the action of leadership is due to persons. And that's what will drive the future. And that's what makes me so glad and honored to come to a university like Drake, like this university, because it gives me the opportunity to listen and to learn. Because Cicero would say how pleasant it is to come back to a university. How wonderful it is to come back to the sources of knowledge, where the open and universal debate is done every day, where the exchange of knowledge is done between the alumni and the faculty. And he ends up saying, coming back to a university is like coming back to the source of youth. And that's what it means to me to be here. If we would search in trying to find what is the power, the mighty power of this nation, it's not in its army. It's not on the economy itself and material growth. It is, of course, on its people and as well in its university system. There is no other nation in the world that gets even closer to what this nation has on this asset of its universities. The capacity of research, the capacity of learning, the capacity of teaching kids and students. So this nation has to keep on leading also on education, technology, and academy. But watch out, watch out. The East, they're getting ready to take the lead. Matt and I, Mrs. Blackberry, what are you doing? Please stand up. My love, please do. People want to know you. She's Martha. We have worked together all along. We share our dream, we share our love. We don't share the BlackBerry. She uses BB. You know what's BB on the BlackBerry? It's a confidential way of communicating. Now she's moving from our web page and our mail address to BB. I don't know what she's working on. Muchas gracias, Marta. Where was I? Yep. That. It's in our hands, in this university and college system. It's in our people, but more so in individual initiatives, in the leadership we all have within, that power we have within ourselves, that power to change, that power to accomplish heroic aspirations, that capacity to grow throughout our lives and lead to build that better world. This is what we believe in, Centro Fox, in leadership. We respect institutions, but as I said, leaders make the changes. And this is why we bring 500 kids every day to Centro Fox. And we decided to bring them from rural communities, from small towns, from humble families, indigenous regions, because to them, maybe, their thinking is that the destiny is to be poor all of their lives. At home, they don't hear any better than that. So they think they either migrate or they will stay working on the harvesting fields or work in the construction industry. And we tell them, no, that's not your destiny. Your destiny is much higher than that. In 5 hours, we hammer on their heads that they can do great, that they can be leaders, and that they just have to go within themselves to learn who they are. What are they in this life for? Or what are we in this life for? What is our project, life project? What is our purpose? And purpose is a very meaningful word. Purpose is a very strong word that applies to everything we do as human beings. So we must have purpose in order to have performance. You start with the objective. We start with the purpose, and then we build, and we align to reach that purpose. You don't start putting bricks without knowing what kind of building you're going to have there. You are not going to be ignorant like that worker, construction worker, that was putting bricks, and somebody came in and told me, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm constructing. Don't you see? I'm putting bricks here." Okay, that's fine, and that gives you joy. No, it's my work. I get money for this. And but you know that you're building a cathedral? Are you aware that what you're doing will be building the house of God? And so he got very motivated with this. And this is exactly what we have to have, is purpose and performance, so that we reach our dreams. This is what we're trying to do in Mexico. We're working hard to build that future. And we think it's much better we do it together with the United States. When you see the house of thy neighbor burning, you better do something about it. And we're neighbors. And Mexico's in problems now. But maybe many people and many of you are not aware that it's not even our problem. I'm talking about violence, crime, drugs. We just happen to be in between those nations that produce the drug in the south, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Bolivia, and the mammoth consumer market of drugs in the United States and Canada. It's a market that yields $50 billion US a year of drug consumption. Imagine what the criminals and the cartels can do with that amount that they raise here in this nation. And by the way, it's not raised by the Mexican cartels or the Mexican criminals. I wonder who moves the drug when it crosses the border from Mexicali to San Diego. Who takes it from there to Des Moines, to New York, to Chicago, to Washington, to Seattle, to San Francisco? Who's providing, distributing, and selling drug to 60 million either heavy users of drugs in this nation or light users? Who launders the money? How it comes back to Mexico to nourish the cartels, or to Colombia to pay for the product? A lot of that money is laundered here in this nation. It doesn't all of it come in cash back to Mexico. And we wonder what this nation is doing when here consuming drugs is considered a crime. It's prohibited, has penalty, which is not the same thing in Mexico or in most of the rest of the world. Consuming drugs in Mexico is not penalized. It's penalized distributing, selling, collecting, laundering the money, but not consuming. And here we have this nation that prohibits to consume drugs and is by far, the largest consumer in the world. How can that happen? Where is the enforcement of the law? Where is the prevention and the limitation of the supply? So there's a lot of questions that we have here, but in the meantime, Mexico's paying the price. We have the dead, we have the blood, we have the bodies hanging from the bridges, we have them cut by their neck. 50,000 kids in 5 years have died, have been killed. Another 50,000 that killed them. And it's estimated that 100,000 are working for the cartels. Same as many people has to be working for the cartels, the US cartels here, distributing the drug, collecting the money, and bringing the money back. So we're talking about 250,000 kids that were not born criminals. That couldn't be. That do not have criminality on their genes. But somewhere along, they lost the path. And basically, it's because they didn't have better opportunities. Because maybe they didn't find the job they were looking for, or they didn't find the scholarship they wanted to have to go to school in college. Or maybe they come from a broken family where the father is migrated to the States and is working here, and the mother is back there trying to feed the kids on the table. So Mexico just happens to be in between the drug-producing nations and the huge market here. I think that Presidente Calderón has taken very courageous decisions, and he should be recognized for that, but he's not winning the war. We're losing the war. Same as the world is losing the war on drugs called by President Nixon a long time ago, because there's no reduction in consumption. It keeps growing and growing and growing. And now there is a big debate worldwide, which I participated in Google, for instance, just 2 weeks ago, with an audience of 800 million and 50 experts discussing about prohibition, discussing about legalization, discussing about what to do. And one thing is clear: the way we are approaching and tackling the problem is a failure, a total failure, not recognized by former presidents, by leaders, by United Nations, and most everybody. So we have to start thinking different and find solutions. And this is what we're trying to do in Mexico, and we're urged to get there because it's killing us. Imagine what we're losing in tourism, in foreign investment, in talent of our business community moving out with their families, on hope and faith in the future of Mexico. I hope pretty soon we find an answer to this, because otherwise maybe there will be one president of Mexico coming that will say, okay, guys, that's it. I mean, I'm not going to be working more on this issue. It's your problem. You consume the drugs, you say what it has to be done. Either you reduce consumption or you open the markets, you legalize, like California is about to do. The last referendum, 44% of people was in favor of legalizing marijuana. And the most recent Gallup survey also shows that 50% of the nation now is ready to consider and approve legalizing marijuana. So public opinion is moving. Governments are yet observing, are yet hesitant to get into the problem. Of course, we in Mexico are more urged maybe than anybody else because of the cost we're paying for this. Now let me move a little bit to the future. I really think that in NAFTA, in our trade agreement, We have one of the most powerful instruments, economic instruments, to protect our jobs, to enhance our economy, and to speed the pace of growth in our economies. I think that NAFTA is dormant for the moment. Nobody is paying too much attention to it. But I think that we must call on leaders, on governments, on the private sector to rescue this powerful tool and keep our association and partnership fruitful for this 20th century. And that we can do together. Deepak Chopra would say, we always have the opportunity to commence again. And maybe this is why universities call the graduation ceremony commencement ceremony. How come when you're about finishing one stage in your life, you call it commencement? But it is because you're going to commence a new life. And so what Deepak says, we have the opportunity to commence every day. Gift yourselves with 5 minutes in silence every day. And let's think about, am I happy with what I am doing? Am I satisfied with the effort and my dedication? Do I have committed some mistakes and so some changes I have to do? And then he says, go out. Go out and gift everybody you meet, anywhere you go during the day. Because the more you give, the more you will receive. And then what kind of gifts shall we give? He says, very simple, just give a smile. Just give a little palmadita, a motivation message, some advice that we can give others. And we have 24 hours to do what we decided in those 5 minutes. Long 24 hours to make things happen. And I really believe in that. And I really believe that leadership can have vision, can have plans, but if it doesn't execute, if it doesn't make things happen, it's no use. And that's exactly what Deepak is recommending. Let's make things happen. Let's make our relationship much more fruitful between the United States and Mexico. Let's work for that world we can envision on this 21st century. Let's make sure that we integrate women like we do in Vicente Fox. Our board of trustees, our board in Vicente Fox, we invited couples, not persons. So we have 50% women, 50% men. And it's really enriching because women have a longer vision, less selfish, much more full of love and compassion. Because women want to build that scenario where our kids can grow with dignity, can grow with opportunities. We, the men, look for the pay of the weekend or the month. We look mostly short term. This world needs a lot of love, needs a lot of compassion, needs a lot of tolerance, and that's what women bring to the party. That's why in Centro Fox, that's a key issue. It's Martha's passion that I share, so everything we do has that content. Well, to all of you, thank you. I spoke too much now. I hope I provoked some ideas on you. And now, let's proceed with the Q&A. Thank you.
Mr. President, do you think that given the violence that Mexico is facing now with the drug cartels, that your nation is in danger of becoming a failed state?
I think we're far from that yet. But what I am convinced is that violence will not defeat violence, that we must change the strategy. I'm a Jesuit educated, and I have read frequently this position of Machiavelli where he says that you gain respect by imposing power and fear. The authoritarian way, the violent way, he claims that that's the way to gain respect. My saint, San Ignacio de Loyola, he says you gain respect through love, through democratic exercises, through dialogue, and that's the way you gain respect. So I don't believe, and I don't think, that the Mexican army should be out on the streets making this battle that is breaking the due respect of human rights most every day. It's not committed and complying with the due judiciary process all people deserve. So we need to bring other ingredients and other ideas on this. At the very end, we will win that battle. But the question is, at what cost? At what cost? Because we're losing freedom piece by piece, and Benjamin Franklin would warn us that those who cede small pieces of freedom with the idea of gaining security and peace, you will not get either one of the two. You will not have freedom, you will not have peace. So I don't think that violence is the answer to the problem we have in Mexico. This is why I'm promoting the idea of legalization, step by step, maybe product by product, maybe part of the chain, extending it, and not to legalize as such, but to put together a framework of regulations and conditions. For instance, Canada is the same situation than here, the United States. It's forbidden to consume drugs. But yet, you go to Canada, to Toronto, to Ottawa, and you listen on the radio how government advises users of how and under what conditions they should use drugs. So they tell them, okay, if you're going to drive, don't have drugs. And if you're going to have a drug, then wait at least so many hours until you go out of home or you go back to drive again. So it's spreading out the idea of managing the problem more than trying to disappear it.
Hello, Mr. President. My name is Ruth. I work with Mexican immigrants on a day-to-day basis. So I'm
Bravo, 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 amiga. Muy bien.
Work with the issue of immigration every day. And I'm interested in the topic of trade that you talked about in competition. And something that I see is that after NAFTA, a lot of people actually spiked and there was a lot of immigration because people couldn't compete anymore in their small farms and had to leave their lands because of economic forces. And so I'm interested in this conversation of re-envisioning NAFTA and what that looks like for people being able to have jobs and stay with their families. And so I guess my question is, how do we make trade more fair and make more the principles of how do we make trade more fair so that everyday small farmers, workers reap the benefits of the trade between our countries, and not just the big businesses and the corporate 1%, because that's what I see is at the bottom of immigration.
And that problem you refer to Mexico,
Yeah, with NAFTA and the trade between Mexico and immigration from Mexico to the United States.
Because, for instance, when NAFTA was launched, everybody in Mexico was against it, public opinion. And everybody would think that it would be a lost battle, that we could not compete in Guanajuato with Iowa, that we could not compete in grain production with the Midwest in the States, that we could not compete with California or Seattle and Washington on fruits, on apples and avocados. And what happened is a total different story. Today we produce in Guanajuato 70% of the winter vegetables that are consumed in this market. And we're about to produce half of all the tomatoes and the bell peppers. And so we learn to compete. And we develop our capacities, and we're doing well on that. So what was supposed to be a big problem in NAFTA is not. Mexico today has an incredible manufacturing structure and facilities with a huge cluster on the automobile industry. And what happened? That only together, the GMs, the Chryslers, the Ford Motor Companies were able to come out of bankruptcy. Of course, the saying is that you lost some jobs here, but the corporation survived. And now they're creating jobs here on the more technological, design, marketing side of the industry. And that way, cars from Mexico are being exported to the States, are also being exported to Europe, exported to South America. So I think that trading is always a win-win situation if you learn to compete and be productive. We still have a rear guard in Mexico of small producers, ejidatarios, campesinos, which don't have the capacity to compete. But the mistake was made in Mexico through the agrarian reform and to the land that was given to them, but without giving them the cash flow they needed, the working capital they needed, the education and the knowledge they needed, the training and else. But when you do things right, everybody wins on a trading situation.
Mr. President, in the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen many Latin American and South American countries move away from the Washington Consensus of open economic borders, free-flowing foreign direct investment, and move more toward Latin American integration and state oversight of economies. Also, we've seen a high China influence in Latin America in the past few years. So what does that mean for U.S. influence in Latin American affairs, and what does it mean for countries like Mexico and Colombia that have long been partners in U.S.'s economic policies?
Okay, that's one way of looking at the problems and the opportunities. The other one is that in these last recent years, before the crisis of 2008 and 2009, Latin America was growing at the pace of 6% a year, the whole of the region. And we reduced poverty by 18% in all of Latin America in those last 10 years. And in the case of Mexico, it was 33% reduction on families in poverty, or 33% number of families that changed from poverty to middle class. So the miracle happened. And how it happened, to me, and my explanation is that all along the 20th century, we were in hands of dictators, military dictators, personal dictators, messianic governments, authoritarian governments. And this was true in every single nation in Latin America, everywhere. So we didn't build or try to build our nations through maybe the most basic, foundational assets that you can have, which is democracy and freedom. And when you don't live by democracy, then you don't feel responsible for the country. You think that the guerrillas, the dictators, are going to solve things for you. Not like here. Here the thinking is you go as far as your effort, as your will, and as your work. That was not true all along the 20th century in Latin America. And freedom, if you don't enjoy freedom, then there's no entrepreneurship. Usually the state and governments run 80% of the economy in Latin America, not long ago, 20 years ago. So we stayed as kids in our citizenship. We did not grow, and we did not compete. But this totally changed in the last decades of last century. And Latin America now has a much brighter future. Just look at the BRICS. The BRICS should be M-BRICS. This is Mexico, Brazil, Russia, China, India. Those are the engines that are moving the world today. Those are the engines that are generating the resources and the savings. To save Europe, now they're calling upon China, India, Brazil, Mexico to see how they can contribute to solve the problems. So, like Friedman says, it's not the decline of this great nation, it's the rise of others. And after the BRICS, now you see the Colombias, the Chiles, the 7 tigers in Asia, and more nations now pulling the rope and moving the world economy. That's great that is happening. And I think that the dominance of the United States is not there anymore. It's the rise of these nations because we're democrats now, because we enjoy freedom, and we're becoming responsible citizens. I have a great hope for this 21st century because more and more nations and economies are going to be coming to pull the wagon and be the engines of growth. El patrón dice que una más. Ya saben quién es el patrón. David es el patrón. Sí.
Mexico is known for having not one but 2 of the greatest civilizations known in history, mainly in there, and the ultimate in the greatest crop, corn. So we have this fantastic heritage of architecture, history, and science. What is Central Fox doing to put forward, or Mexico in general putting forward, the scientific discovery, the architectural construction, the improvement in freedom in academics going forward? What should we be looking for?
You're absolutely right. We have such a strong foundation in our culture, the Azteca culture, the Mayan culture, the over 60 different indigenous groups. There's 15% of our population that is diverse in the sense that is indigenous. We have many strengths in Mexico. Maybe we haven't been able to coordinate them. Maybe it's been some of great micro efforts, macro disintegrated. But that's where we need democracy, because integration will come from democracy and citizenship. So I have great hope that that's what will put us back on the map. But first, we have to solve this problem. Let me here use an example, with all respect, but I have to say it. When you have a government concentrated in one single project and one single idea, like it is and has happened in Mexico these last 5 years. Government only has mind for fighting crime, corruption, drugs. Imagine how President Calderon wakes up every day to ask how many people were killed that day, and it's averaging now 40 or 50 a day. It's pretty difficult to have an integrated vision and program to run as a nation. And I'm going to use the example, with all respect, of President Bush and this nation. I know, I accept that September 11 was an awful day, a day that should never, ever repeat again. But 4 days in advance of September 11th, I was here on a state visit in Washington and spent or invested 2 days meeting with all commissions that had to do with migration and that had to do with NAFTA. And everything was optimism, everything was enthusiasm, everything was will to commit, and everything was ready to go. 3 days after September the 11th comes. And I couldn't even get a phone call with my friend President Bush. They say I didn't call him. I couldn't get through. And things changed dramatically in priorities. From there on, our commitment, our vision, our dream of the two administrations just fell apart. And he dedicated all the power and all the talent and all the government and all the resources of this nation to fight terrorism, which of course is okay. But then this war, the Iraq War, unilaterally decided, when we created a United Nations with the idea that that would be the supreme institutional body to bring in peace among nations, to bring in order and negotiations to solve conflicts, and it was bypassed. And so United States, Britain, and Spain decided to go on their own to a war with Iraq. Then what we created the United Nations for? To bypass it. And from there on, President Bush government had only one idea. And by the way, it was highly applauded. In every forum I went that he was there, he would rally us and he would convince everybody to stand up and applaud him on this strategy. But weeks went by, months went by, and everything started to change. And then the question began, what are we doing in Iraq? How long do we have to be there? How many lives is this nation willing to pay to stay in Iraq? In a way, and with all respect again, the empire. And empire is a good word. It is. This nation is an empire, has very strong influence at the very last corner in the world. But usually empires keep wars out of your territory. And that's a good strategy, no doubt. So I'm not against that. But maybe that's why we have this war in Mexico. And that war in Iraq, at the very end, limited this nation to do a lot of other things that needed to be done in many other regions of the world. I think this nation has the talent, the capacity, the wisdom, the structure, the universities, the academy, the technology, everything to attend many issues at the same time. And I think it's very important that this nation recuperates that leadership and shows us the way to go, the rest of the world. And that will happen because I believe in youth, I believe in women, and I believe that the 21st century will be a great century, that we will come back to growth, that we will come back to defeat poverty, that we will come back to keep creating additional illustrated middle classes, which to me that summarizes the strength of a nation, illustrated middle classes. Muchas gracias, que Dios les bendiga. You're all invited to come to Central Fox, state of Guanajuato. You will enjoy the best mole you ever tasted, the best enchiladas, cooked by Marta, here present. We would love to welcome you there where you have a home. Gracias.
President Fox, on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you for a thought-provoking and informative and ultimately inspiring talk. We're very grateful that you're here, and thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Good night.